Hello and welcome. This session is using the t-berd 2000 OTDR in the expert mode. To get started, press the home hard key. The hard keys are in the mainframe, so you can't physically see the hard keys, but by pressing at the top of the screen, the hard keys appear for a couple of seconds, and now I call these virtual hard keys. So if I press up top, I hit the home hard key, I'm on the home page. There will be two OTDR icons. One is a Smart Test OTDR icon. That's for non-experts. Very simple test, no settings to mess up. Gets a simple trace quickly and easily. Many people are expert OTDR users and want to have more control in terms of the settings used. That is where the expert OTDR is used. To get to the expert OTDR mode, click on the icon. It makes it yellow. That launches the OTDR to the results page. Press the file hard key and select a folder. Whichever folder is highlighted is where all of the results are going to be stored. In this case, the disk folder is selected, so all results stored will go to the disk folder. Note on the right side in the soft keys, there is a create directory soft key. If that is pressed, a directory can be created, and that directory, that folder, will go in whatever directory is highlighted. I will now go to the setup hard key, and there are 5 choices. The 5 choices are over on the right side: acquisition, alarms, analysis, link, file. Whichever one is highlighted is the one currently active. In this case, we can see acquisition is a different color, so acquisition is active. I'll go over to key, selection choices. 1 wavelength may be selected, 2 may be selected, or if it's a 3 wavelength OTDR, all 3 may be selected. Selecting 2 wavelengths will let the OTDR do automatic bend detection. In the upper right, there is a Test Auto button. If Test Auto is selected, the OTDR is still in the expert mode, but it is going to pick the optical settings automatically. Test Auto automatically picks all wavelengths. For speed today, just 1550 will be used. Optical settings are in the automatic mode. To manually change the settings, select manual, and now the optical settings may be changed. If cable testing is being done where there are many fibers in one cable, a good recommendation is to use the first shot in the automatic mode, and then for the second fiber, change it to manual mode, and all of the settings that were used in the automatic mode will be kept. Automatic mode takes 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 seconds to work. We don't need to find out if a fiber is 32 miles long. We already know that from the first shot. So if you go to manual mode, it will keep the settings that were used in the automatic mode, and now your testing will go that much further. To get started, I will keep us in the automatic mode. Time can be automatic, or time can be selected. Typical trace, even if it's 30, 40 miles, will still take 20 seconds. Most units do not have OptiPulse. When the fiber is connected to the OTDR gives an estimate about the cleanliness of it. If it's clean, it will say good. If it's bad, dirty, it will say bad. So typically we put yes and continue. It's a good estimate that the fiber plugged in the OTDR is clean. We can ignore the launch cable or the launch cable at the end of the span. We'll come back and work on those later. So this is our first box. Basically, we're picking our optical settings and our wavelength. In the lower right soft key, there's a top menu button that lets me select the second box. The second box is for alarms. We'll leave it as none. If the user is selected, you can enter the alarms you want for loss, ORL, length, splices. There are some default alarms as well. Hit the top menu again. Now we'll go to the third box. Key ones here are index of refraction. If the index of refraction is known, it can be entered. There are many defaults in here. Scatter coefficient typically is never changed. Distance is a unit of measurement. Could be feet, miles, or kilometers. I prefer results and traces graphics. That just means a marker shows up for each event. If all is selected, all the tabular information from the event table will show up on the trace. That makes it noisy. I prefer just to use graphics. OTDR connection measurement, if that is selected as yes, a event 1 at distance 0 will appear, and that's an estimation of the loss and reflection right on the OTDR port. I do not recommend going into the detection settings, as this will show what the OTDR will display. If you say only show splices above 0.1, then it will ignore all splices less than 0.1. In some cases, expert users might want to do that. In other cases, non-experts will put 0.5 for a splice, and they will see no splices because the OTDR is ignoring all of them. Let's go to box 4. That's the link, soft key. This is information about the job or cable that we're working on. I'm going to call my cable ID cable, my fiber ID fiber, my fiber number. I have the name of location A and location B. You can put some job info in here and also the direction. And then we have the file key. One more important item here is cable fiber number. If it's set to increment, it means every time a test is run, it's going to start here at 4, it'll go to 5, it'll go to 6, it'll go to 7. So there's increment, no increment, decrement. Those are the big ones. We'll go to top menu, that's the 5th box. I previously selected disk as our folder, so that's where everything is going to store. For file naming, I'm going to touch on this right arrow and then touch on this file name, and now my file name appears. Anything that is selected here will be auto-populated. So I'm going to select cable ID. It appears in parentheses, so that is going to auto-populate. I'm going to select fiber ID. That is going to auto-populate. I'm going to select fiber number. That will auto-populate. The direction and wavelength. You see here I have a very long file name. You can make the file name very short. And if you type anything in here, it will also appear in the file name. So I had cable ID, fiber number, direction, and lambda. So here you can see my cable ID was cable, my fiber ID was fiber, I have my fiber number. I'm going from the origin to the endpoint, and there's my wavelength. One trace means if 2 wavelengths are selected, you'll get a fiber 1 1310 and a fiber 1 1550. If you're testing fiber 1 and all traces are selected, you're going to get a fiber 1. You just have one file and both wavelengths will be in there. When you store a result, you can store it as a trace only, a trace plus TXT, or a trace plus PDF. Auto store is available as yes or no. If we have auto store as yes and auto increment, then we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you're not going sequentially, you can put auto store as yes, go to the top menu and go back to link, and put auto increment as no. So that means if our last test was fiber 4, the next one will auto store, but we'll increment. So it will go to save it as fiber 4 again, and it will say, you already saved 4, do you want to overwrite? That's where you say, no, I don't want to overwrite it. I need fiber 4, but now I'm on 22. So this is a way to give you a manual reading when you're not going sequentially, so you can go from 4 to 22 to 17 to 6 to 19. Or you can put don't increment, don't save, and then you just have to remember to manually save after every test. So right now we have change fiber number. I'm going to go ahead and put increment. For auto store, I will go ahead and put no. So at this point, on the home page, a little summary, we had our expert OTDR icon selected. On the file hard key, we had a disk folder selected. It was called disk. That's where all our stuff is going to store. We just did the 5 boxes on the setup page. They're over here on the right side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And what I just did was I went into one of the boxes, highlighted it, and then went over to the left side, and now I have Save Config. So if I select Save Config and I click on it, all the custom stuff you entered in there, such as alarms, the file naming, ignore launch cable, the optical settings, etc., they can now be saved. So it's telling me it's going to go to the disk and the config folder. So I will just call this FFF. I'll hit enter. And now I save this as a configuration. So if I go back to the file hard key, go to the configure folder, there's the configuration I just created, configuration FFF. So if you have custom jobs, specialty jobs, jobs that require certain alarm thresholds, you can call them whatever you want, pre-save them, email them to everybody, and then you can be assured that everybody is running the exact same tests. Now that I have our test set up, I go back to the setup page. Basically, I'm running a 1550 automatic test. I'm going to hit the Start Stop button. It says auto configuration in progress. I was in the automatic mode, so it's figuring out if this is 1 mile or 30 miles. Notice I have my connection check. It's good. That means I plugged in clean. You plug in dirty, it's going to show up bad. A clean fiber should be halfway, 75 to 100% good. In the automatic mode, it commonly picks 20 seconds. So at the end of 20 seconds, it will be complete with this trace. I only picked 1550, so only one trace should be run. Now the trace is done, so we can do some analysis. If I click on an event, I click on it, it says that's a connector. If I click on this, it says it's the end of the fiber. So if you're not great at reading traces, then the OTDR will assist by telling you what event is. If I click in the upper left, notice I have the trace plus one event. If I click in the upper left, this little preview up here, now I have the trace plus up to 4 events. Whatever soft key is highlighted on the right is the one that's active. Zoom is baby blue. It's active right now. I can press zoom, and then I can toggle back and forth between zoom and shift. So right now, if I'm in zoom, if I hit the enter button, I unzoom, I go to the full trace. Because this is a touch screen, I can zoom using the touch screen. So I see event 2 and 3 are out here at the end of the fiber. So if I click to the left and above an event, a magnifying glass appears. And if I click to the right and below an event, I'm going to click right here. Those 2 points will form an invisible box, and that's where I'm going to zoom on. So I'm going to be zooming on the end of the fiber. Now that I zoomed, I can see there are indeed 2 events very close together. So event 2 is right there. If I click on it here, it tells me what it is, and I get my information. If I press the upper right, and I have trace highlighted, it says press the up and down key to go to the next event. So if I press my up arrow key on the T-berd, I just flew from event 2 to event 1. That event could be 10, 20, 30 miles away. Press the button, it flies next right to it. Click my down button, I just flew to event 2. Click my down button, I just flew to event 3. It's only 3 meters away, so I can see that it moved there on the screen. Now that I'm done being zoomed in, and in my upper left I have a preview of where I'm zoomed in. If I hit the zoom button and I highlight it and I hit the enter button, I will unzoom and see the full trace. I can take cursor A and B measurements. Let's say the 30-mile fiber is broke 10 miles from the CO. That's not a lot of good information. We want to be able to move our cursors and say, okay, we're 2 miles from a splice point, or we're 4 miles from a node, a half a mile before a splice point. So in that case, I can put my cursor on something that I know. Let me put cursor A, pretend that's a splice point. Put my cursor B here on the end of the fiber, and now it says the distance from A to B is 1,300 feet. So that gives me some information to help find an event. The quick setup button, if I hit that, I can actually go change some of my settings. Turn off the quick setup button, and then there's fast report. So if I hit fast report, I can save as a trace, or I can save as a trace plus PDF. I will go ahead and save as a trace plus PDF. There's the name that we selected, right? It was cable ID, fiber number, direction, and wavelength. I had my configuration folder selected because I loaded the configuration, so now I'm storing to the config folder. I hit the enter. We're now going to save it as a trace, and then it's going to be saved as a PDF. If you save multiple traces, you can turn them into one PDF, and if you save multiple PDFs, you can combine them into one PDF as well. Go to the file hierarchy. And I had the config folder selected, so that's where my results will go to. Originally, we had the disk folder selected, and I changed it. So whatever folder you have selected is where your results go. Scroll. Up or down to find your results. So there's that cable fiber 4. Back to the results page. There's nothing in green or red. So if I go to the setup, I'm going to select some alarms. Here's my alarm soft key. I'm going to pick JDSU default. And now I have events that are in green, so I got a green check. If one event fails, it will show up in red, and there will be a green X. Notice here it says the total distance is 3,000. And if I go to acquisition, I'm going to ignore the launch cable. The launch cable is always a first event, so I told it to ignore the first event. Now I went from 3,345 feet to 3,335 because event 1 was ignored. There's a symbol, that's a symbol for launch cable, and now it says distance 0 and loss 0 are at the end of the launch cable. So I go back to setup. I'm going to make OTDR connection measurement to yes. And now I added an event. It's an estimation of the OTDR connection port. So the launch cable that is plugged into the OTDR is about a 0.4 and about a -65. So you know it was clean and I plugged in clean. That is an overview of using the OTDR in the expert OTDR mode. If you have non-expert users, we created that custom configuration. I called it FFF. Configuration can be created in expert mode and played in the smart OTDR mode. So a non-expert can load that configuration. It has all those advanced settings. but I don't have access to change them because somebody smarter than I set them up for me. So we created a config called FFF. I'm going to load it as a smart configuration. And now it says I have config FFF loaded. So if I hit start, I get all the settings that you use in the expert mode, and I get them in the smart mode, but I don't have access to change them. So if you have non-experts, you can actually take stuff from the expert settings and allow the non-experts to use them by playing back that config in the smart OTDR mode. So that is the basic overview of using the TB2000 in the expert OTDR mode. Maybe one more item is in the expert OTDR mode. Under time, there is a choice for real time. That will put the OTDR in the real time mode. And if the start stop button is held for 2 seconds, that will also put the OTDR in the real time mode. For more assistance with using the TB2000, the expert OTDR mode or the smart OTDR mode, use the Technical Assistance Center at 1-855-275-5378. That's 12 hours a day, Eastern Time Zone, off the Washington, D.C. Beltway in Maryland. That will take your question, help you with setting up a test, running a test, analyzing a test, or whatever other questions you might have regarding using the t-berd.